The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame. Turn your memorabilia into a work of art.
You are watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source. Happy to have you joining us this week. We're going to be talking about Tennessee, which opened up football practice this week. So we've got a different little group of panelists here with us. Also going to take a look not only at practice and injuries and that kind of stuff, but also let's look at this 2016 roster and compare it. Everyone's expecting it to be 2 losses or fewer. Let's compare it to the last 2 losses or fewer teams at Tennessee, and that would be the 2001 and 1998 national championship teams. Roster position, starting lineups, where does the 16 team stack up? Interesting show for you today. Let's get started. First segment brought to you by our friends at Tennova Healthcare. And when it comes to emergency care, turn to the folks I do. A few years back, I ripped a chunk of my quad muscle. And when you do that, it's hard to even walk. But somehow I got myself to Tennova's ER, where I was diagnosed, treated, and, most important for me, reassured that my leg wasn't falling off. They do a tremendous job at Tennova. And I tell you this every week, it's not just their medical staff. It is also the way they treat you as a person. Fantastic. Tennova Healthcare. All right, you see the panel before you. We have Bob Hodge, Mike Griffith, former Vol and member of the 1998 and 2001 teams, Will Overstreet back with us, and Mike Strange down there in the Chuck Cavaleris Memorial seat. So I'll expect you to make faces and jump in and change topics.
There's only one Chuck.
Chuck's watching right now. All right. The Vols kicked off practice this week, as I said, and let's get into the 2 biggest issues. First of all, passing game. And I'll start with you, Mike, because you've been covering Michigan State the last 4 years. I noticed that on day 1, following you kind of put out there, I don't know what this talk about the passing game. It looks good to me. Day 2, it was more of a, okay. Now, now I understand. Butch Jones wasn't thrilled with the passing game, the throw game as he calls it, last night. Your thoughts on the passing game in 1 weekend from what you've seen?
Well, you know, there's a lot of receivers and a lot of new receivers out there, John, and I think the receiving game and the passing game, it's all about how much work you do during the summer, the familiarity, the quarterback having that touch, that feel for each receiver, and I don't know if Dobbs has it yet. Now, some of the receivers more so than others, but there's been some injuries. So I don't know if that's really settled in yet. I think Tennessee needs to figure out who the receivers are like right now and cut this rotation down and get the ones the reps and stop trying to go 10, 11. Figure out who your guys are because your first game is approaching and September 24th will be here before you know it.
It's good stuff because it makes us feel right for everything we said last year. It's
Right
the same
off
thing.
the bat, I agree with Mike Griffith.
Now, that's a rarity
It
right
is a
there.
very rarity.
But yes, I think that's something we all talked about last year is you have so many of these guys rotating in and out. And I don't know if that's some sort of promise we make you to get you to sign. Come on, we'll play everybody. But at some point, if you want to create chemistry between a quarterback and his guys, as you say, not everybody runs the route the same way. In theory, they do, but you know they don't. Knowing how each guy runs his route, knowing the exact precision speed of each guy, you got to have it down to 4 or 5 guys rather than 9 or 10 guys, it seems.
Yep.
Thoughts on what I just said?
Well,
I took all your words away from you?
No, because I think what worries me is last year you saw the inconsistency that Tennessee had in its passing game. One game they would look, hey, that's pretty good. These guys can really throw it around. The next game you would get Dobbs missing by a foot or Dobbs missing by a yard or the receiver having his back to the ball when it looked like a back shoulder throw and he never turned around. So that's what worries me about what they've gone through early in the season is are you going to have to live with this inconsistency again? But I'll just reiterate, I agree with Mike 100%. Find you 5 guys and play the 5 guys. Don't sit there and do. Last year I remember a game. They were down inside the 20. They were in the red zone. All 3 receivers come out. 3 new receivers come in. I think I even texted you. I said, man, I do not like watching this.
That's that old theory that, if you've got a running back who goes down, we're going to call the same plays because all our guys can do the same things. No, they can't. Everybody's different. I know, Will, this is something that you look at from a coaching perspective. Not only, in your view, you obviously need to do more than X and O. You need to look at the actual player who's filling that X and that O because it changes week to week. But that's true of your own team. In terms of rotating those receivers, yes, these guys may play the slot. That doesn't mean they all play the slot the same way.
Well, not only that, it's just a trust thing because if you rotate guys too much in a practice, you don't know which guy got which rep all the time if you're not keeping up with it. So they may have not run one of the plays you're going to call in a game, but twice in practice. Well, what's that lead to? Them possibly blowing that play and not being where they're supposed to be. And that only hurts your quarterback's confidence because eventually, if he's out there and a bunch of guys are rotating in, he also has to know, does this guy know the play, or am I likely to be thrown to another jersey because he's not where he's supposed to be?
Mike Strange, your thoughts?
I agree with the principal. We said it all last year. And Monday in practice, I thought I saw Joe Mo Fagan out there running around. I mean, they need to narrow it down. But I'll ask this question: Is it because of playing fast tempo the way they do that you have to run more receivers in? That it can't be like, Alabama, for example. It seems like Calvin Ridley never came off the field, but I don't know if they're running the tempo Tennessee is.
Thoughts on tempo?
Yeah, I think it has to do with tempo. I also think it has to do with giving Coach DeBoer a chance to know his personnel. I don't think you're going to see as many players at receiver this year as you did last year. I think Mike DeBoer is going to narrow that down because he knows his personnel better.
If we're talking about the group and he's trying to get a feel for them in preseason, that's one thing. Can't do what they did last year, I don't think. And the tempo thing, then make it a 6-man rotation or a 7-man rotation. They had 9 guys that they were rolling through there last year. All right, the next big item, the offensive line. We'll look at it a little later on our big board, but here you go. We got Drew Richmond at left tackle, Robertson, Thomas, Wiseman, Hall at right tackle, Kendrick and Richmond battling at left tackle. But Butch Jones said yesterday both tackle jobs wide open. Thoughts on the offensive line, Mike? You've been over there all week.
That's the right thing to say. But, the left side of the line looks really good to me. I like Drew Richmond. I didn't know what to, anytime you hear redshirt freshman tackle, you get a little nervous because you think a guy that's never played in a game. But watching how Drew Richmond handles himself, carries himself, the athleticism, there's a reason he was redshirted. And I think the guy's special. I'm not ready to say he's Jack Conklin yet, but in these one-on-one drills, when I'm watching him match up with what I think is a very good and athletic defensive line, I think he's more than holding his own, and he seems very poised to me.
The theme throughout spring was he's very solid pass blocker. Need to see more aggression out of him, a little bit more of a push as a run blocker. You buying that? It seems to be carrying over a little bit.
I don't like I'll be honest, I don't like the run game without a fullback, so I don't know how aggressive you are with a one-back set to begin with, quite frankly. So I think you've just got to be adequate, especially when you got a guy like Hurd, provided that this green jersey is just a matter of them not wanting to get, don't want him to break a pinky or something.
Well, he's a guy who had numerous shoulder injuries in his career, so that's part of why they're doing it. Strange, your thoughts?
I agree with what's been said. I don't have a problem with Jalen Hurd wearing a green shirt at practice on August the 5th or whatever. And you're right about his shoulder history. So Drew Richmond, I think he's going to be really good. I didn't have any problem with them redshirting him last year, even though he was a 5-star. I mean, offensive linemen, they're not all the same. And just because he got redshirted as a 5-star does not mean he's not going to be really good.
I'm not buying the whole there's a competition at both tackles either, because I thought last year coming in as a freshman, Chance Hall played really, really well. And I can understand if you're going to, rotate a little bit here and there. But last year, I saw nothing that made me think that this guy is not a starter in the SEC. And he came in cold as a true freshman and played. He ought to be just getting better. So I think it's down to the left tackle spot. And I'm also going to agree with Mike again. It's starting
killing
to
you.
The thing about Kendrick can move around so much.
Yes.
You don't want that to work against a guy. But if you've got the other guys as starters and Kendrick can play anywhere along the line that you need, there's some strength in that as well.
There's definitely strength to have a guy versatile that can learn all those positions, because this is where that team, I think, still needs a lot of depth and backup. So having a guy like that could play any position if somebody got hurt is key. Now, we'll say this on the Richardson of run blocking. This is the team that on a goal line, they don't get underneath the center and run it.
That's most spread teams.
I understand, but I'm saying that's
why
why is the running game, you're not be as good as somebody else. If you're the far superior pass blocker, you're in this offense.
Gotcha.
It's not strong enough run game to say that it's enough weakness to keep you off the field if you're by far the best pass blocker.
Great point. That's why you're here, because nobody else is going to make one. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about injury updates, green jerseys. We'll talk about Jonathan Kongbo. How's Shy Tuttle doing? What are they letting him do? Lots more to come on the Sports Source. Come on back.